This is called the Essential Koran. So this is the Essential Koran by an internationally respected translator who's also translated Chinese, so this man is gifted, but he has great insight, and I think you'll enjoy this. Knowledge is free. It never hurts to have knowledge. Of course, what you really want is to gain understanding, but you can't have understanding without knowledge. So that's the order in which it's given in Proverbs. By the way, after that comes a special step, which I've given more than one video presentation about, the sequence bin, bina, tibuna, and there's a fourth. This is a book by an internationally famous linguist and scholar named Thomas Cleary. It's not a short book, but it's not a difficult book. It's actually in Arabic. These people are descendants of Abraham. They're Semitic, the original Semites. I've given several presentations on that, but that's actually a somewhat touchy topic because of propaganda. I hate propaganda, but it's dangerous to speak against it. Okay. Arabic is quite difficult to transliterate. I tried to learn how to pronounce Hebrew, and Hebrew is a Semitic language. It's got those guttural and throaty sounds too. Islam is the focus of a lot of attention right now, as I'm sure you're aware. This is from the Introduction to the Essential Koran by Thomas Cleary. The Quran is universally known as the sacred book of Islam, the religion of submission to the will of God. The chapters and verses in this volume of extracts from the Quran, which is also known as the Koran, have been selected to form a rosary of readings and recitations intended to introduce the non-Muslim reader to the essential wisdom, beauty, and majesty of this sacred book. The Quran is undeniably a book of great importance even to the non-Muslim, perhaps more today than ever, if that is possible. One aspect of Islam that is unexpected yet appealing to the post-Christian secular mind is the harmonious interplay of faith and reason. Islam does not demand unreasoning or unreasoned belief. Rather, it invites intelligent faith, growing from observation, reflection, and contemplation, beginning with nature and what is all around us. This may remind you of David Bohm and Krishnamurti. I could name others. Accordingly, antagonism between religion and science, such as that familiar to Westerners, is foreign to Islam. This connection between faith and reason enabled Islamic civilization to absorb and vivify useful knowledge, including that of ancient peoples, whereby it eventually nursed Europe out of the Dark Ages, laying the foundation for the Renaissance. When Europe got on its cultural feet and expelled Islam, the European mind was rent, torn, by the inability of the Christian Church to tolerate the indivisibility of the sacred and the secular that characterized Islam and had enabled Islam civilization to develop natural science and the abstract art, as well as philosophy and social science. The result of this tearing was a painful, ill-fated divorce between science and religion in Europe, one whose consequences have adversely affected the entire world. In the post-Christian West, where thinking people, including scientists themselves once more, are seeking solutions to the difficulties created by the Christian divorce between religion and science, the Quran offers a way to explore an attitude that fully embraces the quest for knowledge and understanding that is the essence of science, while at the same time, and indeed for the same reasons, fully embraces the awe, humility, reverence, and conscience, without which humankind does indeed go too far in considering itself to be self-sufficient. That's a quotation from the Quran. Humankind does indeed go too far in considering itself to be self-sufficient. That may be for you the first verse from the Quran that you ever heard. Even for the secular Westerner, apart from any question of religious belief or faith, there are immediate benefits to be found in reading the Quran. First, in view of the sacredness and vital importance of the Quran to approximately 1/5 of all humanity, a thinking citizen of the world can hardly develop a rational and mature social consciousness without considering the message of Quran and its meaning for the Muslim community. With the fall of communism, it has become particularly clear that global peace, order, and self-determination of peoples cannot be achieved without intelligent respect for Islam and the inalienable right of Muslims to live their religion. The second immediate benefit in reading the Quran, therefore, is that it is a necessary step toward the understanding and tolerance without which world peace is in fact inconceivable. For non-Muslims, one special advantage in reading the Quran is that it provides an authentic point of reference from which to examine the biased stereotypes of Islam to which Westerners are habitually exposed. Primary information is essential to distinguish between opinion and fact in a reasonable manner. This exercise may also enable the thinking individual to understand the inherently defective nature of prejudice itself and thus be the more generally receptive to all information and knowledge of possible use to humankind. That ends the first section of the introduction to the Essential Quran by Thomas McCleary. I certainly hope you appreciated this very brief introduction. That was 1993, so about 30 years ago, this book came out. It's high time we knew something about Islam and the Quran. It's of great benefit. It's not just to lead toward world peace, but I think that is something every conscientious scientist or human includes in their itinerary. You have to embrace that or it's meaningless. Am I not correct? We'll be right back. Keep looking up. There is a commentary to follow this. Thank you very much for tuning in. This is a critical time in human history, more so than ever, although you could say it's always been like this. Let's get to the bottom of it, shall we? Let's understand each other so that we can appreciate each other's culture and live in harmony. I think that's a reasonable goal, despite all obstacles. Certainly David Bohm thought so. Krishnamurti thought so. The Dalai Lama thinks so. I think you could name some other very famous names who thought the same thing and preached the same thing. So we're on the right track, both scientifically, culturally, socially, religiously, philosophically, scientifically, definitely. Thank you. We'll be right back. Good day to you. This is Anagalactic. Every now and then, I like to compare or really correlate science with religion. Religion is the oldest occupation of man. And these days, it is very well known that the Europeans, and in particular the Americans, have a certain little game going where they just don't like religion. Well, there's a history to that. There's a reason why Europeans and Americans are leaving even the idea of religion, except as superstition. It has something to do with the influence of science and rational logic, but not really, even in whole cultures that transcend nations, such as Islam and Christianity, and those are really the only two. I was first exposed to religion in my life in any form as Buddhism. I came from a somewhat rare family. there's a God and Jesus loves you. And that's really all we knew because we were not a religious family. The reason I'm telling you all this is because it's important to know where a man is coming from personally, that is, to divulge himself, if he intends to talk about religion. Very recently, I made the claim that a man who preaches science, in other words, to teach people how to think about science in a philosophical way, whether it's about the quantum paradox, that it means the universe splits in half, or if it's astrophysics, which means that the universe exploded out of an impossibly negative dot into space that's never been defined. If a man is going to talk like that as if he knew what the hell he were talking about, he has to identify himself religiously. Because 100% of those men who talk like that, either about quantum mechanics forcing a split in the universe, they're atheists. Or those who talk about the universe coming from an impossibly inside-out dot that expands into a space that's never been defined. Those men are all atheists. And what you'll be finding out on your own, I'm not going to preach to you, and I'm not going to state directly what you're going to learn, but at the risk of influencing your perception of what is to come, you're going to see that the overlap of those men who open their traps and talk as if children should be allowed to listen to them because they are pure as driven snow, and they talk about the Big Bang, even by that name, showing that they're actually probably not qualified to speak to children or youth, or anybody really. They should be in a little club, they should be in a little church, talking about their goddamn Big Bang, which is anti-scientific. And then talking about the quantum paradox as if that forced a split in reality, to the point of saying that it causes more than one universe. Well, these men are obviously clearly out of their minds, but every single one of them, without exception, is atheist, and they're not agnostic. I've known several men who claim to be agnostic in and out of science, and I respect that. But I don't respect a person who's an atheist. First of all, why would you even say that? What are you trying to start a fight with the rest of humanity? No, they think that they're gods. They're atheists because they don't want anybody above them. And God, obviously, by definition, would demand some kind of honor. Well, they don't honor anybody except themselves. And that is the hallmark of European culture and society and politics and religion for over 1,000 years. That Europe has been a cesspool of the very worst practices and the very worst ideas. And then all of a sudden, because of a glut of people in part, a series of discoveries was made beginning, you could begin any number of centuries ago, going back to 4 or 5 centuries ago, or even 6. But it's about 2 centuries ago that things began to pick up in Europe in a way they never picked up anywhere else. It was called technology. And technology was considered to be the offspring of science. And because there was a religious institution, which is always devastating if you have a religious institution, at least in Europe, but in general throughout history and throughout the world, if you have a religious institution, that is, it's backed by the government, then it is part of the government. And the Roman Catholic Church, actually, it was the other way around. They were on top of a lot of governments. And of course it caused the Dark Ages. The Roman Catholic Church not only did nothing to relieve the Dark Ages, it caused the Dark Ages. So in reviewing Islam, I take a lot on my shoulders because of the decided bias in Europe against Islam. And you may remember from your schooling that the Mohammedans incurred on Europe from the south. They went across the Bosphorus and Dardanelles, went all the way to Vienna. Martin Luther was alive when this happened. They were at the gates of Vienna, which is in Central Europe. They also had gone across North Africa and spread their religious and cultural and politic body through more than half of Africa going south, and all the way across North Africa, which to this day is Islam. Everywhere they went, they converted the pagan tribes who were in their way. They didn't want to hurt them, but necessarily when you're taking over someone's land, some of them will get hurt. So, I don't know if you like that or not. I don't see how anybody could like conquering, but it was something that happened. And they went into Spain and took the entire Iberian Peninsula was taken over by the Islam. You could say nation. It was one entire nation, but it depends on how you define nation. You might prefer the word culture. And they were on their way to Paris. They were going to take over France. They were going to take over Europe. They were going to take over the world. But then the European Vatican, the murderers of millions of innocent true Christians, they were the enemies of Christianity masquerading as true Christians. And that's actually in prophecy, which I don't expect you to credit. I'm just telling you, all of this fits. But Islam never got Vienna. It was driven back out of what was thought at the time, or is now, to be Europe. And Spain, really, I suppose you could say, using a cliche, threw off the shackles of the Moorish Empire and became European again. Which, at least, makes some kind of sense. But the Islam nation stretches farther than Russia. It stretches farther than Asia. In the longest width of Asia, the Islam empire is much larger. It basically spanned the entire earth except for the New World. It reached all the way to Indonesia, which is as far as you can get. They didn't go into Australia, though, but they did go into all the other islands. I'm not sure why they didn't go into Australia. I really don't. But they took much of India, and then everything to the east of India was converted to Islam. They went all the way into China in the sense of being welcome there. They were considered to be good. They weren't considered to be like, the Huns or just some European army or Vikings or Portuguese in the future or Spanish in the future or the England in the future. They weren't like that. They weren't imperialist. And their empire remains today, but now it's mostly just cultural. They're Islam. They're very religious people. Well, it's not just today that there is a complete chasm that's been enforced by propaganda, Western propaganda, whereby I was not given any knowledge of the Islam people whatsoever in grade school or in high school or beyond. It's obvious to me that the Western culture had long ago made up its mind that Islam is foreign. It's not, well, in a word, it's not Christian. Quite ironic. But now, today, because the Islam people are literally being slaughtered wherever they're found, the United States has declared war on the Islam nations in their entirety. And of course, Israel, whoever they actually are or represent, and it's the cat's out of the bag. We know exactly what Israel is now. They're the terrorists who are out to murder all of the Islam people. It's plain as day. It's just terrifying to say. Yeah, and of course there's political rhetoric to deny what's actually happening in front of your eyes. But now that I know the history, the wool was pulled over. There was no such thing as an education to make me a well-rounded man. I was given an education to join the ranks of the same imbeciles that used to shit from their upper stories on the people in the streets. They did that for centuries. Just throwing their dung on people walking below. Absolutely uncivilized. Certainly the Teutonics were uncivilized, but they all were terrifyingly bad people in every sense. Whereas for I would say, yeah, for 1,000 years, measuring from 700 AD to 1700 AD, that's 1,000 years, the Islam Empire was the model of culture while Europe was a festering cesspool. And it's just remarkable that everybody in Europe had white skin, whereas every single Islam person has brown skin. But the Islam people converted half of Africa, where their skin is black. Converted half of them to Islam, and they remain Islam to this day. Ethiopia is Islam, but so is Tunisia. So is Egypt. So is Libya. I could name a dozen more countries. And they're happy being Islam. Christians, comparably, the Protestants, for instance, they're never happy. They're also unwholesome. The Islam people are pure. They favor purity and they enforce it with cultural pressure. It's better to be pure and good. Not in Christianity. Christianity is based on hatred. And now America is attacking the good people. And it's pretty obvious that the Americans are the enemy. They're the bad people. Well, I'm in America. But I'm not political, so I'm not a threat. I'm only speaking from the point of view of culture, not from the point of view of politics or who deserves to own the oil, which is what it's all about. The Israelis need to be sure that that oil that's in Iran belongs to them. That's how they got the Americans on board. Because the Israelis might be able to do without oil in the global sense, but not America, not Europe, and not anywhere that's been Europeanized, such as Japan. The end game is brutal. I wrote a political thesis on this when I was 14 years old, which got an A+ for whatever that's worth. You would have to know where I was at the time to know whether that had significance or not. More than 50 years ago, I knew perfectly well what was going to happen about now. I wasn't sure how far in the future, that the Americans would seek to get that oil by hook or crook. Well, they got a secret weapon. It's called Israel. That's terrifying because World War III just started. We have a two-front war now where Israel is determined they're going to invade Iran. But the Israelis can't. They don't have enough men. They're going to get the United States Marines and Air Force to invade Iran, which we've already begun doing. We've executed 3 attacks. First on Iraq, then on Afghanistan, which is on the other side of Iran. This is on the opposite side of the world, by the way. And then we went back and landed in Iraq again. So Iran is under attack, and that's the beginning of the Third World War. I don't know if you've noticed it or not, but NATO has been attacking Russia lately. NATO has been attacking Russia for a long time. It's all part of a great orchestrated dance. The ones who come out on the bottom are the Islam people. So at least for the sake of posterity, at least for the sake of Isaac Asimov's foundation, the library of truth that will still be in existence in the future, I must raise my voice as an American to tell you what you're about to lose forever. I happen to know a lot more about it than you'll ever care to know. And I can just assure you, for what it's worth, it doesn't matter. The Islam people are not going to be wiped out. The reason is, the apocalypse involves a lot more than just Israel. Now we have science on behalf of Europe, where it was basically turned into technology. Hitler found that out. The result of technology was the arms of Krupp, and Hitler by all means should have taken over Europe. But alas, Hitler didn't know exactly his enemy and just decided to commit genocide. Well, that's due to reasons and forces that are beyond your understanding. You'll never know what actually happened. I do. I know the reasons for things. This is my job. You can't possibly understand it. I don't represent anything. I merely speak the truth. That, in case you have forgotten, was one of the original American freedoms. The right to speak your mind. You do have to be aware of the fact there are limits to everything. The truth itself does not incite anything. However, propaganda does. So I must be quite certain of myself in telling you that Islam represents goodness, true religion, and true science and true culture, and the American, European, Israeli whites represent decadence, destruction, and evil. I know that you know that. It's just that you can't face it. I'm not telling you to not fight for your country. I would say you certainly don't want to be in the military or go into it right now, because you would not be defending your nation. This nation doesn't need to be defended, and neither does Europe. Europe is under no threat from anywhere, and certainly the United States is under no threat. Why is the United States and Europe and Israel attacking Iran? It's to protect Israel. Why? I can't tell you. You know that that is what's happening. You just don't know why. Well, what we're going to find out beginning today, I'm going to be telling you just the simple facts of history, where it impinges on science especially. But the conflict that has always existed between Islam and Europe. There was a time when Islam was the aggressor, but if you check back to see more, the bigger picture, no. There's mutual distrust, mutual antagonism. The popes, that is, the Satanic Vatican, if I may just put it bluntly, said that Islam was of the devil, whereas Islam could see perfectly well that the Pope was definitely the devil. But when you have two sides calling each other the devil, you're going to fight. Well, that's what's going on now. It's just an extension of the same historical confrontation. I take the full side of Islam for the obvious facts that they're good. They're good people. You have been brainwashed, dearie. So this series on the truth of Islam, what it actually is, why you should love it and embrace it rather than fear it and hate it. It's your goddamned white society that fears and hates it. And that perpetuates itself. That's called a group mind. And the Catholics are no different from the Protestants. Isn't it a wonder that we in this supremely educated nation of America, our huge educational system of which we're very proud, what were you ever taught about Islam, which is 1/5 of the Earth's population and by far the dominant religion? Do you know anything about it? You don't, and I know that you don't. But now I do. I've been studying it for quite a while, a few years. I am an Islam man. In every way. Skin color ultimately doesn't matter. The white people are evil. As a culture, not individuals. So is Stalin. Actually, he was Georgian, but he was white. The whites really got around, but mostly in the extreme northern latitudes. The middle band of Earth is occupied by brown people, and the black people live exclusively south of the equator. It's been like that for 10,000 years. Not quite. I actually know the exact timetable, to within thousands of years. You have been lied to at so many levels. I have to hold myself back. And what I say is true, but it's unnecessarily vindictive, because nothing is going to change. Me raising my voice is not going to change the course of history in the slightest degree. I really present science, but the reason I present science is for an ulterior motive. The highest purpose of all is to get you to submit to your Creator, to venerate your Creator. Well, that's not going to happen in white society. There may be individuals. The statistical you that I see out on YouTube, both the broadcasters and the listeners, they're all the same. What might help, which I can contribute in all good conscience as a scientist, is to tell you what happened in history. And for that, I have an amazing book. I'll read it to you. This is Anagalactic, bringing you the secrets of the universe, now the secrets of the world. Parts of this you're not going to like because of your brainwashing. My job as a scientist is to elevate your level of awareness with the truth. It has to be the truth. Well, that's all I deal with my whole life. I deal with nothing but the truth. So help me God. Okay, keep looking up. We'll be back with Islam and Europe and science. It might make a difference if you're no longer an ignoramus. So tune in. We'll be right back.